Your business exists because you had the idea to start it. Everything begins in our minds. That's why your business results cannot outgrow your current level of thinking. Do you want to serve more clients, make more money, without working more or burning yourself out? Grow yourself first as a leader of your business, because that's who you are, a leader, even if you're the only person in your business right now. When you lead yourself first, the business results will always follow. My name is Maggie. I'm an international business and leadership coach, an expert in business mindset, strategy, and high performance. I created the Diamond Effect podcast to help you elevate your thinking, expand your perspective, and through it, grow your business without overwhelm. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Diamond Effect podcast. I'm very excited because today I have a fabulous guest, Jocelyn Flanagan, the visionary founder and executive producer of E=MC Square Events and Production. It's a global powerhouse, recognized as one of the top 50 events companies in the world. Jocelyn has a wealth of entrepreneurial experience and building very successful business to share with us today, and I can't wait to learn from her. Welcome, Jocelyn. Thank you for being here with me. And if I could ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of background in your business and how you get started, and then we'll dive right into the conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here. And wow, it is not an easy 2-minute answer about how it all started and how it all began. But I think one of my origin stories I tell people is that I have photos of me at the age of 3 pointing and organizing all of my friends and all of the social lives from our age of 3. So I didn't know at that time I could make a living out of it, but here we are. So I have an interesting story. I actually started thinking I was going to be in the sports management side of things and yet work on the Olympics and run the IOC. And then when I went down that path and learned all about it, I realized that is not necessarily the route I want to take, but I knew intrinsically that I was more corporate and more creative focused. And at that time, I had been living overseas. When I moved back to Calgary, I started looking for an experience where I could lean into what is now called the event industry. Back in 2001 in Calgary, it was very, very young, this industry. In fact, I couldn't find anything out about it until I chose a job in a performing arts center just because I knew events happened in there. And my day on the job, I walked down a set of stairs and I saw a poster on the board saying that night was the first ever annual general meeting of the Canadian Special Events Society. So my plans for the night, I went into this dark room, underground theater, and lo and behold, there were 75 to 100 people that were interested in this event world, be it buskers, be it entertainers, be it audiovisual suppliers, but there was this world that existed that I was, just about to meet. And that was the start of my journey, was just being in this underground theater, seeing all these people in this event world, and then seeking after the right people in the room to talk to, jumping forward several months and really starting my own company with a few people at that time. There was 3 of us that decided to start a company.
So I would love to explore that, because you go to this event, right? And then I guess there were talk there about maybe finding jobs in the industry and so on, but you went right to starting your company, your business.
Much longer.
The idea of it and how it happened.
It's a much longer story than that, but I sought after one of the speakers that was at this event. I sought after her 4 months that I really want to understand what's happening in this industry. And finally she relented and said, yes, come see me. And she was at a rehearsal, an audition for a show. And I walked into this rehearsal and I saw drag queens and models and musicians and actors all in this room together. And I was in Calgary, having just come from Spain and Toronto. I was blown away that this world existed, let alone this could be a career. And so I volunteered, and I thought I'm going to volunteer at this event. Again, it's a very long story, but the next year I was producing that show. So I think taking advantage of ever opportunity and keeping my eyes open. As I said, it just with that experience, I met the right people and decided that it would be the right time to surround myself with other experts, because I certainly want, and find the right people. And we decided that let's try it. And when my mindset was in that situation, I thought, I'll try it and we'll put on a couple of events and then real job. And I'm 25 years later and I don't have a real job. That has become it. So it was a leap of faith for sure, thinking I really start it. And timing was on our side. And I surrounded myself, as I said, with smarter people than me. And we were able to really take a hold of a very small industry in Calgary and then grow with the economy and grow with what the needs were.
And that was definitely my thought when I started my coaching business. So I had a real job in corporate or a real career. I don't like it calling real because entrepreneurship is also real. It's just a different way, right? Of being a professional and building something and being fulfilled that way. But definitely I had that thought, okay, I don't want to be in corporate anymore. I want to try to be my own boss and build a business. But the thought was, okay, let's try it. I've never run a business before, let alone in Canada. So let's try and see what happens. And then worst case scenario, just stay in my job, stay in my career. So it's funny how this part is very similar for both of us. Okay, you start a business, right? You have partners. How do you find your first client, or maybe not even like only the first, but maybe the biggest one that kind of helped you start growing? How you secure those contracts when you're brand new? You maybe knew a little bit, or maybe your partners knew, but you're just starting. You don't have a lot of proof of concept.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Excellent question. Yeah. So my partner at the time, Ken, he had volunteered for a charitable organization, the Safe Haven Foundation, for years. And so when we started, that first call was to that foundation, Karen and John Sherbet. And they said, yes, though they will hire us. So we knew on day one that we had a client. And shortly thereafter, we got a call from somebody else. It was actually Coca-Cola that called us, but it's one person knows one person that immediately everybody talks to each other. It worked out very well. And then we started, that was in July. In August, I think it was, we decided to go to an event up in Edmonton, and we had the ultimate elevator pitch. We didn't know it was an elevator pitch at that time, but we ran into a man in the elevator. And when he got to his floor, we had secured a meeting to go and talk to an oil and gas company in Calgary.
So you had a real elevator pitch.
Yeah, without even one.
So do you remember what you said to that gentleman? Did you know right away who that person was? Or you?
But one of us did. I did not. And it was just a very quick, are you him? And then it opened up. And really, it was just a very quick conversation of, what do you do? How are you? And it was, yes, we've just started this company. And by the time we were done the ride, he said, we're going to meet, and we're going to meet next week. So he gave us a card, and we followed up, and we were in his office the following week and talking about their Christmas event. And this was a large company in Calgary, that's certainly was market in 2001.
Yeah.
And so we had this meeting, and he said, you're going to produce our Christmas event, which was at large, but you're going to work with all of the executive assistants, because they are the social committee, puts this event on. And he did warn us. He said, they're not going to like the fact that I'm bringing you in to do this, but they are going to like it when we're done. And so that was exactly it. We went into that meeting, and of course, they wanted us in that room for our main client. Why are we going to come in and take over? And the way that we just naturally operated, which continues to this day, is that we're highly collaborative. No, that even was a word, or I didn't know that I was doing it. But I'm like, no, we're going to take your ideas. We're going to make your ideas come to life. We'll inject some energy, and then you guys get to show up the day of the event and take all the credit and enjoy yourself and not be worrying about it. And they were a little skeptical, but still to this day, 25 years later, I will get hugs when I go back to Calgary and I run into any of these ladies, because they were thrilled at the fact that we did exactly that. We respected everything they wanted to see from a vision. We took it up a little bit more, and we made their lives easy and made them look great. And that was a really great feeling. So, and that one event turned into just, again, luck of the draw, but that client ended up merging with another. And within the next 6 months, I was flying on a corporate jet to New York to open a brand new merged company with a new name on the New York Stock Exchange, with my business partner back in Calgary with 4,500 people. And we were doing a simulcast between the two locations as we rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah. So again, it was the best elevator pitch I've ever.
And there's definitely, you can see serendipity, like where you were meant to do that, right? Like coming into the elevator, of course, you're not expecting that the CEO of that company will be there. And then one of your partners recognizing them and starting to chat up. I love it. But I can see how collaborative you were, and then how those poor executive assistants who had to like scramble before and organize those events, and the end saw the value, and you were able to convey that easily for them. Because even in my corporate world, I remember Christmas party and so on, the executive assistant, they were running like chickens without the pen for X amount of time to organize it, and then they couldn't enjoy themselves during the event because they were the ones like doing things. And so once I can see the tremendous value that you brought, not only to the participants by elevating the event, but to the ladies who were usually tasked to organize. So
and then that just helped us, because that started to legitimize us as, again, showing what that value was. And the corporate culture in Calgary hadn't gotten there yet. Yeah. So word of mouth happens very quickly. And then once we did that larger launch, and then subsequently an even bigger celebration of that company, it just, word got out. And at that point, the oil and gas industry in Calgary was gaining a lot of traction, and everybody was looking for the next best thing. And events started to become very much of the culture of the Calgary corporate, really their sort of ecosystem.
Beautiful. So then as your business grew and you started expanding, and when we had a chat before this recording, you told me you started expanding to other provinces, Canada, and you realized that there were cultural differences in the provinces. So I would love to talk about that. What were those provinces? And me being an immigrant, I haven't even visited all Canadian provinces just yet. I've been to Quebec, to Ontario, and quickly to BC, but that was like corporate in and out from office to office. So I would love to learn a little bit about that. And how did you navigate that as a company expanding across?
So the first experience we had with this was before we had even opened offices in other parts of the country, but we were doing an event across the country for a Calgary-based client. And the mandate that we had was make this a 5-star event for everybody from Vancouver, Victoria, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, Montreal, and we didn't go that as far east, but Sarnia, I think, in Ontario. Anyway, there's lots of them. And so we said, we can't decide what's 5-star for Winnipeg. So we innately knew that what works white collar downtown Calgary not work for Edmonton. So it wasn't really until we started diving into these conversations where each event was very different because of the culture of those places, and what was considered 5-star in one place was not considered 5-star in another place, from even what bands we're bringing on to what sort of food and how are we presenting that food and how loud is the music, and all of this stuff was just really eye-opening. And so then when we did open an office, we started in Vancouver. So Calgary was our head office. And then we opened an office in Vancouver. And then shortly thereafter, we opened in Toronto. And it became very clear for us that in the Vancouver market, there's not a lot of head offices. So when we're talking from a corporate construct, they didn't have decision-making control. They had to get the decisions were made in Toronto. So they were always beholden to what was happening in the Toronto world. And from an industry standpoint, they did things a little bit differently and they weren't as collaborative. And when we roll in and we're highly transparent and highly collaborative, it takes people a little bit by surprise in Vancouver market. But I think really from the Vancouver side, it was probably just a smaller, and I would say, but still quite very creative, but different feel. When we opened in Toronto, it was interesting because I thought Toronto would just be way more creative in general and bigger picture thinking. And what we realized that Calgary, which nobody thought of Calgary at that time, it's an entrepreneurial city. It's highly creative because it's everybody there they started on their own and they were building on their own. And so we were tasked from the early days by clients who had their own private planes and could do anything they wanted in the world. We were tasked to do something different than they'd ever seen, be more creative than they've ever seen. And so we were given really carte blanche to be creative and come up with ideas that nobody had ever seen before. When we started working in the Toronto market, we got this is how it's always been done, therefore change it, but no, this is how it's always been done.
And don't change it too much.
But don't change it too much. So when we went in there and we tweaked one thing, and it was as if we've changed an entire sense. And wait a second, we've got to push the envelope a little bit here. But the corporate structure was just far more buttoned down and less flexible to change and innovation versus where we started. And I think that really helped us in both ways. And then also, again, just from the industry, one of the reasons I hadn't wanted to work in Toronto because I had heard from industry that it was this dog-eat-dog world. It was not a really fun culture to be in from an industry. And one of the very things when we started on site in an event, our vendors on site, most of whom we didn't know, were asking me specifically, like, where am I from? Why am I treating them so nicely? And
they weren't used to being trained.
Were including me in these meetings. And are you hired to be the cheerleader for this? Like, no. But when these vendors said, it was multiple times at this event, they said, you are not from here. Why are you being so nice? And that to me was this, wow, we've got an opportunity here to come and just be our friendly, collaborative, transparent selves and actually make a difference. Because the friendlier you are and the more transparent you are to your vendors and your partners, the more they're going to do for you. And we just start elevating each other.
Yeah.
Part of that conversation was industry culture, but also corporate structure. And it's just been really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And now I shared with you earlier, I recently sold the business.
Yes.
And it's to a Quebec-based organization. So now even we're doing even more events in Montreal and Quebec than we've before. And that's just a whole other world of cultural nuances. But it's fascinating.
I'm sure you'll learn a lot about people and, as you say, their culture and how they do things. So I have two follow-up questions that come just as you were talking. So one, in terms of creativity, what would be one of your favorite, most creative events? And if you can paint it for me so I can see the picture. I love creative people and I really appreciate that. So one of the most creative events you were ever done and kind of what came into it? I would love to know.
Oh, there's so many. And it's really what people define as creativity, which is
you. So for you, as an organizer, one of the most fun creative events.
And I always go back to this one, and it's sort of the reason why I'm still here today. I believe in more of this show production. So our company produces events of all sizes and scopes and scale, and from intimate dinner parties where this was years ago, but we're flying in foie gras from Paris and we're bringing champagne in from somewhere else and we're doing a very high-end dinner party. Those don't happen often, but they are fun when they happen. To corporate AGMs and conferences and product launches and company anniversaries and celebrations and fundraisers and social events, and then as well as show productions. So award shows and larger award shows, and now we're into producing broadcast pieces as well. So the show that I'll speak about was this one that I originally volunteered for, that the next year I was producing. And this show I produced for 8 years, and we as a company produced for 8 years for AIDS Calgary. And it was, the creativity came because we were working with 300 volunteer models, dancers, drag queens, costume designers, lighting designers, set designers. And we brought together this myriad of humans that wouldn't normally intersect and brought them all together as volunteers. And our music designer and our audio producer, like, we were just this, for months, this tight group, even though there's 300 of us, creating a show really out of nothing other than imagination and heart and soul. And that show changed. We were pushing envelopes all over the place. We were, again, trying things that hadn't been tried on these stages before, and getting inspiration off of one another. So to me, those shows called Calgary Cares really started me as a producer. Today, they still feel like some of the most creative work that I have ever done. But creativity comes in so many ways. We opened in Vancouver. We were producing an event that client from Toronto and Calgary chaired in Vancouver, and it was a fundraiser for a True Patriot Love Foundation. And we said, we're going to turn a regularly static event that happens in Toronto into something very unique. And so we brainstormed and we created in the Vancouver Convention Center a forward operating base. And we had the tents that they would actually have at a forward operating base. We had tanks outside. We had all of this outside. We created buffets in this room with these tents from Kandahar. People paid $25,000 a table to go to this event, and we served on metal trays, as you would at a mess hall. Trays, they were getting 5-star meals served by military captains, dignitaries, putting this food onto their metal trays so that they can take it back to their seat.
An experience.
And it was camo chic was dress code.
Okay.
So we went to every Army surplus store across the country and inspected all these things. So that to me is the creativity that's one of the examples, but that's a way that we try to put things, tip them on their head, shake them up, and then find random things that.
I love how you took upscale high-end event where people who, let's say, can afford those tables, they're used to a certain way of attending events. And that can get boring, right? If you're going to the event, okay, food is great and band is great, but they all look the same. When you come to an event like that, where the standard is still super high, but it's a mixture of the super high standard with the military type thing, that creates an experience I believe you can't forget, that you will remember that event forever. I love that. So then, second follow-up question to that. So you mentioned when you were moving into Toronto, and there was the corporate culture of we've been done this way. We don't want it to go out of our way. And you mentioned that you tried to push a bit boundaries, right? You tried to get your clients to be a little bit more creative. How did you do that?
Oh, I think it really little by little. And proof is in the pudding, as they say. And so when you can push one little thing and it makes a difference, then you're really allowed to maybe make two things a little bit different. And also what we really try to do is bring meaning to every event. And one of the things that seemed very prevalent in Toronto, and I love Toronto, don't get me wrong, and that's where I'm based out of now from a business standpoint. But a lot of things used to be driven by celebrities. So charitable organizations would have celebrities at their event, think that would draw the crowd to come to this event because the celebrities there. What we tried to do early on in our time in early days in Toronto was say, it's not about the celebrity. Let's actually create an event around your message and around your cause, not around celebrity. Because people will go to the event and they'll say, oh, I went to an event that celebrity X was at, not I went to an event for this cause and this cause was amazing. So we really tried to change that mindset and certainly had some success with a number of our charities there, as well as even corporations, right? And there are times, it's funny, I just talked to another client. I'm like, this is the time when you actually need a celebrity, but that's where you don't, because we can create a really unique experience that is very much driven by your key messaging. As I said, it takes a little bit. It took a little bit of time. Oh, I know what you mean now. Okay, we can try that.
Yeah. So then another question, what comes up to me, and I always, when I coach my clients, I try to teach them that and convey that when we are experts in what we do, we need to be able to do both. Listen to our clients, what you did when you were creating the events in all those different provinces, not necessarily knowing what 5-star experience means to them, right? So you talk to them and listen. And at the same time, use your expertise to sometimes suggest something that the client might not think about because you have the experience, right? Because you are the expert in what you do. So what do you think it's like the secret sauce of balancing both and not maybe go too much into one or the other, because that's not necessarily what benefits the client most?
Yeah. For us, it always comes back to, why are you doing this in the first place? Really creating that event around that why, and then really proving how each of these elements are going to come back and support that reason. It is not ever about us. Sure, there are some tricks maybe that we want to try, but if it doesn't make sense for the client, we don't bring it into the fold. And likewise, when a client says, "Ooh, we want to try this. We've just seen this," and we say, "Sure, that's a neat trick, or that's a neat new technology, but it has there's no reason for that in this. It's not going to help." So we, as I said, the way that we work is so collaboratively that our job is to the client in the end goal. We can't push them out of their comfort zone too far. And sometimes we need to bring them back from what they think is fantastic and actually scale it back. And there's times where we've actually told a client that they don't need to do an event, which is counterintuitive, because I want the business, but if it's not the right thing for the client we would guide them and say, you know what, this isn't, we wouldn't suggest you do this, or maybe not this year, and then next year we can come back and actually do that kind of event. So I think just being open to any of those conversations certainly gains a lot of traction, and then trust.
Exactly, right? That's how you build trust, because the client knows that you have their best interest at heart, rather than, as you say, oh, I just want business at any cost, right? That's definitely not something that brings trust into the clients. Okay, so then let's talk a little bit about challenges, because organizing large scale projects or even smaller, but as you say, there's a lot of moving parts, right? Vendors and creation and employees and dealing with the clients, employees, and so on. Inevitably, challenges will come. How would you deal with those challenges? Maybe you can share whatever, some specific challenges. How did you navigate that in some of the events? And whatever they were, the challenge.
Yeah. There's event challenges, there's global economic challenges, there's all of these sort of challenges. What I try to tell my team is that we can't shy away from challenges and to spot one and to anticipate one when it occurs. If we've done something wrong that's causing a challenge, we need to own it, embrace it, and then take care of it. So that's just one thing. Like if you've done something that is causing a challenge, we need to learn from it, embrace it, and then carry on. Gosh, there's 25 years of challenges at events. I think that the key to success, probably in any business, but is being very resourceful and believing you're not the smartest person in the room. Don't be the smartest person in the room. Surround ourselves with people that are going to help us come up with the solutions, but always know there is a solution somehow. I think that's important. And I know I go back in history when I think of one where we pitched for, this is a very large event, and we pitched to do indoor Cirque du Soleil. And see, it was like this again was 24 years ago, and the silk performance and all the aerial performance.
Yeah.
And the client had bought it. We were all excited about this really large piece performance we were going to do. And then the venue told us that the venue was not sturdy enough. The roof was too old for us to rig anything ceiling. And what we couldn't do is obviously put 4,500 people in a room and have the roof collapse. All right. What are we going to do? Because we've already hired the cirque artists. We've already done all of this stuff. So how are we going to solve this? That's when we get on phone calls with our industry partners globally, our friends and our vendors, and say, what can we do? And there's a solution out of France where we can suspend artists off of helium balloons. Maybe that can work. To the cirque artists, they say, we've never done it before. Okay, you've never done it, but could you? Interesting, maybe. And then how do we turn that maybe into a, we'll try it. So there was that piece of it. Okay, we'll try this. And then we bring in the helium balloon from France, and it's the day before the rehearsal, and we figure out that the helium connector in France is not the same connector as in Canada, as these things are not compatible. So then it's, okay, now who do we call? So finding all of these right people to call on board and then just hope that it works. And it did, and it was beautiful. But that's just one challenge. Challenges like that happen all the time because we are the boundaries and seeing what is possible. And we don't push the boundaries like that on every event. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And there are still challenges. Electricity goes out in the middle of an event.
100%.
What are you going to do? You just prepare for the what if as we go.
Yeah. And that's definitely even in my corporate world. My background was in facility management, and there was always something happening at facility. And even any project I led or co-led, whether it was an IT project, whether it was a construction project, the more something is complex and it lasts for a period of time and there's a lot of moving parts, inevitably there will be things that happen that we don't have control over or we couldn't predict or whatever. So as you say, I love that mindset of there's always a solution. As long as you believe that and you don't give up, you will figure out something one way or the other. Sometimes the solution is great. Sometimes it's maybe not ideal. It moves you forward. So then let's talk about the business challenges, because of course you've run the business for many years and there were economic ups and downs. How did you deal with those where maybe things were great and then the economy changed and things weren't as great anymore? How did you navigate that as the founder and CEO?
Yeah, this is a bit of the learn as you go. So the first time for us was definitely the 2008 global crisis. And because all we knew from the time we started until 2008 was that everything was on the growth and it was amazing and nothing could go wrong. We hear that this is happening and was at that point, I will say, somewhat naive to what this fallout was going to be. And also, interestingly, it affected organizations differently. So that first time, our response was slow. We didn't anticipate it's going to happen. Again, that was in 2008, but we were already working on projects for 2009. And we really didn't see much decline until sort of the end of 2009.
Okay.
And then 10. And again, we were just a little bit naive in what was happening. So at that point, we did need to scale back significantly from on our team. And that did a reset. I think, I don't know the numbers now, but we might have been 20 some odd people going into it. And then we probably were 10 to 13 on the other side. And it was really unfortunate. That was a tough thing, but the lesson learned of like, how do we anticipate this a little bit more? And then interesting, we moved into the Vancouver market because the Vancouver Olympics were happening. They were shielded by any economic downturn because the Olympics were going. And when we opened in our Vancouver office, it was at the time where it was like the global economic downturn was finally hitting Vancouver. So just because, again, they were somewhat falsely shielded by it. So that was just an interesting thing. And then same thing happened. We're following the Alberta ups and downs of oil markets. So what we were doing by opening in Vancouver and opening in Toronto was really a large play of diversification so that all of our eggs were not in the basket of oil and gas, which I would say from 2001 until 2010, when we opened our Vancouver office or moved into Vancouver shortly thereafter, we would have been 85% was oil and gas. Where now we've got our pie chart that has multiple colors on it, and we've been able to diversify. So no industry really is larger than probably 7-8%. So that we are able to shelter. Certainly at this point, all industries are up in the air in terms of what's happening from a global economic standpoint, but it's more across the board than just down.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great lesson and great strategy because, as you say, not every industry gets hit the same way in the downturns, some more than others. So as you diversify, you definitely are more balanced in how you can shelter yourself from downturns. Thank you for sharing that lesson.
And then during COVID, when that hit, what we did is we were faster to react in terms of, we were very fast to furlough team members, which was great because we ended up, that's a whole other conversation about what we did COVID, but we were very fast to react. And then we were also able to bring people back, but what their choice, they could either let go or come on a 3-day basis. And then that came back to 4 days. And then it finally came back to 5 days. But that was a much quicker reaction because we weren't 10 years prior.
So let's talk about COVID just quickly, because that definitely for an event industry, in-person event industry, that was, everybody was inside, no events anymore. So how did you navigate that? How did you shift and pivot?
That was an interesting one also, but in a good way, not obviously immediately because it was hard. I remember going up to my cottage and sitting in my reading chair, staring out the window. People think they have all the answers and all the predictions within a week of this happening. I'm like, nobody knows. We have no idea. See what happens. But we did an online event within 2 months of COVID hitting.
Wow.
And it was for the Canadian Strain Awards and everything. We just pre-produced everything and sent it online, and it was challenging, but it was interesting. And then we started doing these online events, as everybody was, and learning the technology, which was a tough learn. But also what we determined really early on, and it was great, my team actually determined this, because the immediate thought is, why do they need us? Why do clients need us if they can just work with a tech company to execute their event? And what became more and more clear is what we do as event producers, and we still determine how we're storytelling, how we're creating these messages. We still need to create emotions. We're just now creating emotions 2-dimensionally, not 3-dimensionally.
Yes.
So we have to become more creative, because now we're talking to everybody the same way. Whereas if you go to an event, we've talked so many times about the psychographics and everybody's different. So some people are going to walk into an event and think, oh my God, this food is amazing, or this looks incredible, or that sounds great, and I like this speaker. Oh no, I like this entertainer. So there's generally for everybody, and when it all ties together, somebody will walk out of an event and not know why they liked it, but you would have liked it maybe for different reasons without even knowing it.
Yeah.
But now when we start speaking 2-dimensionally, we need to get even more creative in terms of how, in fact, we are telling these stories and creating these messages and these videos. So it was really validating for our team to know what our value was outside of just picking what color linen was going on the table. So there's many learns that we had there. And then that also got us much more in tune with this broadcast space, because then to studios, create content in television studios that then we would air, or we would Zoom people in studio and Zoom performers into a studio. One of the events we did within the first year was an event for thousands and thousands, 10,000 people, I think, across the country and in Chile. And it was a Christmas celebration. And so we needed to create this platform, but then live entertainers in each of these locations, because it was a live event across multiple zones. And if I wanted to walk into a different city's space, I could immerse myself into that space and watch what entertainer
That's amazing.
we were getting. So that just essentially became a multi-simulcast broadcast. It just called a virtual event. That really was great for us from a learning standpoint, so that when we came out of COVID, we had a lot more skills and a lot of comfort of how we can integrate everything that we learned. Even now, everything that we learned from a Zoom connection and at work, we're still using, because when we're at a live award show, we can now very easily, technically, bring in anybody from around the world and surprise them. And we inducted a woman into Canada's Walk of Fame, and she was over 100 years old. So we had to go to her. And it's these things can work because we got trained that way.
Yes.
And I think there was a lot of, again, more credibility on our industry because people were not able to get together.
Yeah.
And especially in the sports and entertainment world, which is live events.
Yeah.
There was publicity and media around the fact that these weren't happening. And that really, again, it became about the live event industry is floundering. And that just shone a spotlight on. I said, that just did the best thing for us. So I don't want to make it sound like COVID was all rosy. However, there was a lot of good that came out of it because of the fact that people learned and knew when connection is important.
Yes.
And there was the thought that hybrid events would take over the world and they'd be part in person and part virtual. And while that happens, like while we still can stream live event, it certainly didn't take off the way a lot of people thought it might. And I'm quite happy for that, to be honest. I think we have the tools. I think still people are really not anxious, very excited still for that human connection.
Oh, yeah. I think that nothing can replace being close and interacting with a human in person. And as you say, at the same time, like the experience of COVID and figuring out the technology to still somehow be together, even though we can be in person, just enhance your skills and many other people's skills and gave us that flexibility that if there is a part of event that can happen in person, now you can merge and create something hybrid that it's even more elevated. So I loved how, again, took that unexpected Black Swan event and found an opportunity in it to still come out stronger on the other side with your team, the skill set, the business, and so on. So I love that. So let's talk about team leadership, because I love what you say about you need to be in the room where people are smarter than you, right? You need to surround yourself with people who are experts in other areas where you're not, because that's the complementary thing and that's how the business grows. And I believe from my experience that it takes a very confident and self-assured leader to do that, because when we're not self-assured, when we have insecurities, then people tend to hire people who are either exactly the same or below their skill set level, and that never helps the business. So I want to talk about your philosophy of building high-performing team and leading people in a way that they can be the best selves, and ultimately the business benefits from it.
I think this was a lesson from my parents, and certainly my dad, who was an entrepreneur. And I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I just remember from the time I was young, if I didn't know the answer to a question, I couldn't make up an answer. Don't say something if you don't know it. Never be afraid to ask questions. I know I learned that from him, is if you don't know the answer, don't pretend you know it, get the answer. And that's something that I've told anytime we hire somebody on our team, it's so important. Don't pretend. And you have to empower people to ask questions.
Yeah.
And empower them to not have to know things.
Yeah.
Because that's where insecurities come in. Because if I don't know something, but people think I should know this and I don't know it, then I will immediately shut down. And I certainly have in various experiences. But so that's a place that I lead from, I think, is one, be curious. Don't lead with any sort of ego. That isn't going to help anybody. And just don't be afraid. So that's a key thing for us. And and there is no dumb questions. Now, when I say that, don't ask a client something that we should already know. Don't ask them the same question 3 times. However, if you've got a question after a client meeting, we're going to hang on and you're going to ask me what that meant, or we're going to ask. And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell a client, I'm going to get back to you on that. So and then make sure we get back to them. So that's one place that I lead from. And then I wouldn't have it in me to be a micromanager. So I wasn't born that way. So I certainly lead from giving those around me autonomy and authority and trust to do the right thing or to find ways and ask the right questions. And I do believe in I just fundamentally believe in collaboration, and why that's true, I don't know, but I just fundamentally believe that. And I just think that's the way I was brought up. So I think that's really a key piece in terms of that leadership and that culture, and allowing people to have a voice. And we have national meetings. One thing we have national meetings every Tuesday, and we start off with great things. We start off with what's a great thing that you've got to share. And that could be from an event that you just did, from an experience of seeing this, your flowers are blooming, or you just went to a concert of your life, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That ended. So that we did. We actually stopped that for a couple of meetings because I was like, oh, maybe that's taking too long. Maybe that's not working. And immediately there was a shift in how people were responding. They said, no, we can't leave that out. That's an important thing that people want to share, and we want to learn, and we want to be happy. And if you don't have anything great to say, you pass, but you pass. And it just has become a very cool social part of our company because we're getting to know people on a different level, and it just really pumps up where we're starting our meetings then from. We're starting a place of positivity.
100%. That's, for me, that's also like showcase the culture of the company. And very often those are the little things. And as you say, if you don't do them, you see a big shift in how people, in the energy or how people respond. So I love that. So in terms of, do you have any tips or any principles that you've learned in hiring the best people, or spotting out of the candidates that you have and that you interview, spotting that the right people for the company?
Yeah, that's a tough one, but it's in all the business books: hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah,
often. And I think in many ways that's true. And for the hiring, there are some of those key pieces, and it's questions that are going to lead to, can these people be flexible? Because we do. The best ideas sometimes come at the 11th hour, and we all need to be like, oh yeah, that's way better. So being flexible, being the detailed thinking, and all of those things. But we get a really good reading off of people, and we lead a lot by intuition as well. And never is anybody hired after one interview by one person or two people. So we do a lot of not a lot, it's not arduous, but conversations. Yeah. This team, we want you to have a conversation with this group of people, and everyone in our company comes at things differently because we all have our own experiences. So while it doesn't become, as I said, too cumbersome, it becomes, again, a more of a collaborative. And when we haven't done that, it actually hasn't worked out very well. And you say about spotting people or having interviews. I did have a conversation with someone asked me, can you talk to my daughter? Because she's not sure what she wants to do. And she loves music and she does that. And it was during COVID. And 5 minutes after a meeting with her, you don't know much about our industry, but our industry, I think, needs you. And then I introduced her to a bunch of people, and I said, I don't know, but I've got this feeling. And 5 years later, here we are, and it's just this great hire. So there's a lot of things when people ask me, how do I get into this industry? Study this, do this, volunteer. We have lots of people on our team that have volunteered. And that's important. And come on site and see if you actually like what we do, because people think that it's glamorous, and it's not glamorous.
80% of the time it's not, and then 1% of the time it is.
Get a feel for what we actually do, and then see if you like it, and vice versa. So yeah, there's no real one thing that's going to stand out, but our industry is full of unique individuals. Work hard, we play hard, we laugh lots, and when in stressful times, we support each other. So that's really key. So it does take a certain personality to do all of those things.
Yeah. And I definitely deeply resonate with your lessons and your experience, because that's been my experience as well in terms of hiring. Anytime I desperate hired because we got ourselves in a situation where we didn't hire her early enough and so on, never worked out. Yeah. Anytime I went against my intuition, meaning maybe the candidate was great and the resume was great and even like the interviews, but there was something that I didn't dig deep enough or we didn't discuss because we also collaboratively hired, never worked out. And as you say, like those multiple touch points, and it doesn't have to be too complicated. It doesn't have to be too arduous. Just allows you to get to know the person a little bit more, because anybody can be like proper friend with the show once, but if they have to 2 or 3 times, it's a little bit different. And then when other people see it, they have a perspective that you don't have. And then when you can talk about it, you will get deeper into a candidate just by conversation with people who also interviewed a candidate. So 100% agree. Like whenever we weren't rushing and listening to our intuition and following our process, that's the best times when we hired the best candidates. When we went off script that way, like most of the time it didn't work.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, talking about how you navigated the demands of being the CEO of a very dynamic company, growing, and through challenges with the economy, but also challenges with with running the business and things that happen, like more personally. What worked for you? Maybe some lessons that you've learned to not burn out or not start hating what you do because you gotten too stressed about it or whatever the case may be.
That's an excellent question. And when I think the first time I went to a conference and I heard people talking and they were so stressed and they were just sounded miserable. And I'm like, I got myself into the wrong business. This is not a world where I want to play in. If this is in 10 years, if I'm going to be miserable like this, I just can't be. And so I don't know if it was, again, if I did this intentionally or if it's just part of who I am, but I do believe that my sort of more group mentality helped. There are many people that I adore and I love and do amazing things that have named their companies after themselves or made their companies so that if it's not them in the center or on leading, then there's no value in their organization. And again, I didn't do this because I knew any better. Our name came from my original business partner. He had the name. I'm like, that sounds like a great name. And therefore, that was our name. So I can't take any credit for it. I didn't have a lot of thought into it. But what I did know was that I didn't want a company named after myself. And I'm glad that I didn't. Just the nature by which I do things it isn't about me. I've been able to put other people in the right spot. And yes, the first several years, I was definitely leading a lot of the projects, bringing team members in, and also realizing my own strengths at that time. As I went, I really didn't know what they were. It was a trick of all trades and do a bit of everything. And then I do remember when we had a very high profile client and I said, I'm not your lead on this event. And he said, oh, yes, you are. I said, no, I'm not. I can't be. And you actually don't want me because what this event is, I'm not the best at it. This person's going to be way better at this. Fortunately, it was okay. I trust you. And that was a way I could offload projects by not having to be that face, but being the support behind the team. And that's really where I probably learned the art of just giving people the autonomy and the empowerment to do that. So I talked to good friends of mine that have been in the business and they, they can't take a holiday. I can take a holiday. My husband will say as many as I should. But now because I don't need to be everywhere, I can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
Also take a step back and help build the vision because I'm not, and I've ebbed and flowed. I'm now producing events. I love producing shows, more in that wheelhouse, but there was a time when I had stopped doing that so I could run them. And I woke up one morning and I thought, I need to do something creative on the side and creative. And then realized, no, I own a creative company. I don't need a side gig. I can actually be in it. But it flows in terms of the in and out. But so again, it's surrounding myself with the right people has helped from that in the business side of things. When it comes to financial and global challenges and all of that stuff, I historically played a lot of squash in my and certainly 5 years, or when I moved back to Canada and started the company, I was playing a lot of squash. And let me tell you that I played, I'm sure 4 to 5 days a week during 2008, 9, and 10. That was it was my savior, I think, playing squash, hitting a ball as hard as you can and running around. Honestly, that was a very good tool to keep me sane. So that was something that, and I have amazing friends and I have amazing family and I have very, very good friends and a supportive family. And I leaned on them a lot when things weren't going well. And so I'm lucky that way and supportive team members. I think that's all I can say there, because it definitely has been riddled with stress here. And coming back from COVID, I think was probably I'm going to say the most stressful. And there was one summer where I thought, I absolutely hate my job. And if this were what producing events were like for me, always, I would have lasted 25 years. Like if this is how people normally feel, this would be a horrible place to be, because I took things very personally. It was like things were changing, prices were skyrocketing, their budget high enough, it was hard to navigate vendors after COVID.
Yes.
So many vendors had been laid off. People were coming back. They were untrained. They didn't know what they were doing. The prices had skyrocketed. So it was really hard. And I thought, this is atrocious. And I hate this. Fortunately, again, I leaned on other people and figured out that I wasn't the only one feeling this way. But it was a very hard time. I mean, COVID, it was just, we had learned this nice little bubble inside. And then when it came back, the industry needed to relearn a lot of that. Anyway, so that was challenging, and balancing books is challenging. We're in a very cyclical world, and we learned throughout the years a lot of processes and things that keep us going today. So that's a whole other lesson. That's a whole other podcast. Yeah, really, more of my office manager and accounting team would know more about. But it's not flying blindly and think everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I think on the personal, it is definitely important to take care of ourselves as humans, not just as in the business, and find those ways, be it squash, vacation, and be it we're in this world where we're moving way too fast. And I do think even out of COVID, I think actually work-life balance is worse than it's ever been, because people are responding, and myself included, right? Because we don't need to meet in person
we can now work nonstop.
We're working nonstop. And whereas before, like at least I had 20 minutes break in between meetings because I had to go at least across the street to go to a meeting. Now we don't have that. So the conversation about work-life balance is probably even more important than it was before, and myself included. But anyway, those are some of the ways that I manage it. And I don't always manage it well because I don't have a squash court at the ready all the time.
Maybe it's time to look for another sport. I agree with you. I don't think any of us has it right all the time, but at least being self-aware when you get to the point where, there's signs where, I'm starting to maybe not like my job or my business, or I feel demotivated, to not maybe blame the business, but think about, okay, what is it that I need as a human to then feel as excited about my business or about what I do that I used to? And that might be a vacation or just a good workout or our social network, our family, the loved ones, because I definitely feel it. If I don't spend enough quality time with my family, I feel more drained. I have to have that in order to feel energized and good, even though I love what I do in business.
Yeah. And over the year, I've been involved in entrepreneur organization. I really loved, I think I was in that for 10 years. I loved it. I have a personal coach now that I work with also. And as much as I think I don't have time for this, when I get in the calls, I come out the other side really energized. And that was last January. I was just in a fog. And I'm like, oh, I need to get out of this fog. And I need a coach to help me get out of this fog because I need to talk my way through it.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big believer in not trying to solve your own problems by yourself because it doesn't work that way.
As Einstein said, we can't solve the problems with the thinking that created them.
Exactly.
Just as we're finishing up, I would love to know, what advice would you have for somebody who's early in their business and they're just starting to build it? Maybe they're at the point where they're starting to scale. What would be some nuggets of wisdom that you would have for them?
Take a deep dive into the accounting side of things and just making sure you're getting the right guidance and it's not too late to change if, you didn't. So, and we didn't start with the right guidance and the right knowledge. So that was something that we had to then retrace and solve. So that's something that is just really key. Make sure that you've got the right guidance and the right knowledge there. The other thing is, I'm going to say, and I've talked to other people just starting their business, be prepared for success, because people can go into the start a business or just at the beginning and you're prepared for failure, but it's the success that you actually need to be prepared for. Yeah. It's hard to keep up when that success happens. So definitely be prepared for it and plan for it. I think that's one piece of guidance that I think is important. And then don't normalize success. And that's a challenge that I have to talk to myself all the time because I normalize it. And then that means I'm not giving enough congratulations to my team or not. Okay, we did this great, moving on. Now I'm on to the next thing. Now I'm on to the next thing. Not everybody works that way. I think take a breath in between those moments of success and really reflecting on them, and certainly understanding how others around you want to reflect as well. That was a big learn for me. It's like the love languages, but it's very similar. Know your people. And then the other thing is also set boundaries for your own self. And this is where and I tell this to my team, if a client is texting us or emailing us at 10 o'clock at night and I'm awake and I'm working, doesn't mean that I have to respond to that. Because the minute I respond at 10 o'clock at night today and tomorrow, if I don't respond at 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday, that client's going to think I don't care, I'm not responsive. So set some boundaries there so that we're not always seemingly available, because you aren't always available, and nor should you be always available.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really important. And you're setting a precedent the minute you do it. So just stand. I think those are some pretty big things, just to, as I've said from the beginning, to surround yourself with really smart people.
Yeah. I love those are beautiful lessons and nuggets of wisdom. Is there anything else before we finish? Is there anything else that maybe we didn't talk about that you want to share that you think would be valuable for the listeners?
I don't think so. I think this was really, this was fun. Thanks.
Yes. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm so glad you agreed to do this with me. So is there a place that people can connect with you or check out the company if they want to do a big event?
Sure. Yeah, our website, emc2events.com, and I'm Jocelyn at emc2events.com. So I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Beautiful. We will link that in the show notes. Again, thank you so much, Jocelyn. That was an amazing interview. I learned so much, and it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening today. If this podcast resonated with you, please come back. Also, you can leave a review on whatever platform you're listening. And if you have a suggestion, question, or a topic you would like me to talk about, let's get in touch via email. Email me at Maggie@stairwaytoleadership.com. See you in the next episode.